The instinct for self-preservation is encoded into every cell of our biology. It dictates our physiology and shapes our neurological responses to every threat. Yet hundreds of thousands of people each year reach a threshold where the cessation of consciousness appears preferable to its continuation. More than 720,000 people die by suicide every year. This is a borderless pandemic, accounting for 1 in every 100 deaths globally, and ranking as the third leading cause of mortality among 15 to 29-year-olds. These figures indicate that suicide is not a solitary moral failing. The sheer volume of loss points to a widespread systemic fracture, requiring us to look past statistics and into the architecture of human despair. More than a century ago, sociologist Emil Durkheim established that suicide is a collective societal phenomenon. He argued that social cohesion, the ties that bind us to our community, acts as our primary psychological protective factor. Durkheim's concept of egoistic suicide explains what happens when those ties weaken. In the modern era, digital connectivity often fails to resolve this. Passive scrolling and hyper-connected environments frequently leave individuals experiencing the loneliness of a digital person, creating an intolerable existential weight. This isolation follows stark demographic patterns. In Canada, males account for nearly 75% of total suicide mortality. For middle-aged and aging men, the rates of loss are consistently the highest across all observed years. This profound social isolation acts as the initial pressure on the mind. It compromises a person's psychological structure long before any act of self-harm occurs. To understand how someone moves from the desire for death to lethal action, we turn to Dr. Thomas Joiner's interpersonal theory of suicidal behavior. It dissects the exact psychological leap required to override our biological programming. This model shows suicidal desire emerges from two states: thwarted belongingness, or profound loneliness, and perceived burdensomeness, the belief one is a liability. Because we are wired to avoid pain, lethal action requires acquired capability, a habituation to pain developed through repeated trauma. This framework allows clinicians to distinguish between those experiencing ideation and those who possess the dangerous physical capability to act. While the desire is psychological, the execution is governed by the physical brain. Severe psychological pain causes a violent physiological alteration. Chronic trauma causes the HPA axis to maladapt, triggering a cortisol flood that creates an overwhelming stress response. This physically degrades the brain, reducing gray matter in the prefrontal cortex. Structurally compromised, the brain loses its biological brakes, unable to inhibit impulsive action. A fatal crisis is the result of a biological storm. Emotional pain peaks at the exact moment the brain's physical defenses collapse. But neuroplasticity works in both directions. If chronic stress can degrade these neural circuits, clinical interventions and support networks can rebuild them. Given the right environment, the brain can activate proteins that physically repair its resilience infrastructure. Environmental changes buy the time necessary for this repair. Adding physical barriers to hotspots like the Lionsgate Bridge obstructs the immediate impulsive act. This pause allows the intense physiological arousal of a crisis to wane, creating the space needed for human connection and clinical care to begin. We see the impact of this systemic approach in the zero suicide model. By implementing universal screening at every healthcare visit, the Henry Ford Health System drove its patient suicide rate from 96 per 100,000 down to 24. When public infrastructure assumes responsibility for risk, vulnerable individuals are granted the physical time required to survive their neurological impulses. Yet, clinical settings are often the last place vulnerable groups will go. Social stigmas frequently prevent marginalized men from seeking traditional therapy. Grassroots models solve this by meeting people where they already feel safe. The Confess Project trains barbers to act as mental health gatekeepers, turning routine appointments into opportunities for trust and disclosure. This localized approach is also seen in Greenland and First Nations communities in Canada. These programs prioritize cultural revitalization and land-based resilience, proving that rebuilding a sense of identity is a highly effective defense against despair. Mobilizing everyday community spaces creates a scalable, structural reinforcement that reaches people before a crisis peaks. Ultimately, surviving a crisis requires the restoration of meaning. Psychiatrist Viktor Frankl argued that our primary motivation is a will to meaning. He believed we are challenged to change ourselves when we can no longer change a situation. This philosophy is captured in the Japanese art of kintsugi. Artisans repair shattered pottery using lacquer mixed with gold, treating the fractures as a vital part of the object's history. Recovery is a deliberate process. 988 responders, community gatekeepers, and clinical teams act as the binding agents, meticulously joining the fractured pieces of a mind back together. This recovery constructs a new self, one structurally reinforced by experience and illuminated by the scars of survival. We emerge from the darkness not just intact, but demonstrably stronger precisely because we have been mended.